available on the Council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the Council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without the other individual's consent. The Council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The Council's Code of Meeting Practice sets standards of conduct for a Council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the Council. Members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance. Any submissions received have been provided to the councillors. I now ask you to please welcome the Mayor.
Thank you. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and the Gundungurra peoples. The Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country. This is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungara takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders, past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. We have one apology tonight, standing in the name of Councillor Kevin Schreiber. Can I have a motion to accept? That's moved Councillor Christie, seconded Councillor Fell. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on 28 April 2020. It's moved Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor Christie. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. And I'll sign that as of today's date as a true record of that meeting. Thank you, councillors. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Fernanda. No declaration? No declaration, thank you. All right, there being any other declarations? All right. With the minutes, there's a few minutes by the Mayor tonight. I intend to go through them reasonably quickly and won't be offended if people don't have wild opposition to any of them if they don't feel the need to speak. We've got a fair bit on the agenda tonight. Of course, if you do, please feel free. The first mayoral minute standing in my name is moved by me and seconded by the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Vanderclay. Councillors, as you know, the Valuer General has commenced the regular review that they commence about land valuations. And as you also know, this has an impact on people's rates. Land valuations inform rates, and where land valuations go up, so do rates. Where they go down, so do rates. What the public may not realise is that council rates are a finite thing. The amount that council gets doesn't change. It's like a waterbed. You push one side down, the other side goes up, but the actual amount remains the same. During the last round of Valuer General variations, homes across the mountains were hit very hard, particularly in the lower mountains, and this valuation apparently seeks to address that. The problem is our community has been through significant bushfires. We've had the floods and we've had COVID-19. At this time, while I do want to see people who should have relief because of what happened last time get that relief, I don't want that waterbed effect, meaning that other people have to pay a lot more. It's not right. So what I call for in this is for the state government to recognise that Blue Mountains is unique. We're unique because we're impacted by bushfires and floods and COVID. A lot of other areas were, but what makes us unique is that we are 100% a tourist economy. So where other areas that were impacted by those things may have agriculture or light manufacturing within them, we don't. So we are almost solely a tourist economy. On that basis, we are somewhat unique. And so what I'm calling for is the state government to subsidise any households that are going to see increases. In other words, for the state government, for this 3-year period, to flatten the curve by effectively paying the difference for those families, those homes that would see an increase, and therefore allowing rate decreases where they are occurring in the mountains to go ahead. It wouldn't actually cost an awful lot of money, but not having those rates go up would actually assist our community greatly. Council needs the revenue to support the community and provide services. Those who are going to get relief deserve the relief, but those who are going to get hit shouldn't get hit because of what's happened. On that basis, I think this is a sensible solution, and I recommend it to the council. Does a seconder wish to speak? Again, if no one's in wild opposition, it may just pass. The seconder's given his head a shake.
No.
Does anyone oppose this? Then I might just put it. Is everyone content if I put it? I'll put the minute. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Mayoral minute number 2. It's moved by me and seconded by, who wishes to second it? Councillor Vanderklay. Basically, we're live streaming tonight, and we're going to now have to live stream permanently. We should have actually been live streaming last meeting. What we have here, the Brady Bunch view, might not be the best view for an ongoing live stream. So what this does is it begins the process for us to pick a package that will best suit the needs of our community so that they can be informed appropriately. So we may not go with the Brady Bunch view. We may go with a different form of live stream that might be more accessible. In the meantime, we'll use what we're using tonight. But this simply begins a process of finalising a live stream package that will move into the future. Is there any comment? Any opposition? No? Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak?
I just want to say a couple of things.
Yeah.
I support this because I actually think that along with other developments from COVID that is causing changes. I think this, the whole experience that a lot of us have now had of the remote meetings and so on shows that there is a great deal of accessibility about them. I mean, I wouldn't want to do them all the time, but I think one of the things I've talked to some of the other managers on councils where they're live streaming, and one of the comments they've made is it's actually increased public participation, that they're getting more people coming onto the Zoom or the remote meetings than they had at the public, in the public galleries, in face-to-face meetings. And I think behind that is the fact that in this community we have actually 100-kilometre spread, you know, so if you live in Mount Irvin or Mount Wilson, you're really not very often going to come to a council meeting. So I think what is great about this is it really does, I love the idea that people don't have to be able to get to the chamber to witness the meetings. So I think it's a real opportunity for us to look at something long term, even when we have returned to being able to see each other face to face. I think it just could bring in a lot more people to our meetings, which has to be a good thing. It has to be a good thing that we have more people participating in the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? There being nothing, I just might make a comment. Councillor Brown, to your last point, there's another advantage. Earlier this evening when Councillor Hoare appeared and I reminded him that we were live streaming, he went and changed what had been a rather unkempt appearance to the more sartorially splendid person we see tonight. So there's another benefit there. Thank you very much. I agree with the comments made. There's nothing further, so I'll put it all those in favour. Against, declare it carried unanimously. Mayoral minute number 3, standing in my name, is moved by myself and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, there is a proposal largely coming out of the Wallandilly area about a Lake Burragarang, or Great Burragarang Walk. I'm actually not sure it's a proposal that's going to get up. I noticed that some state agencies like Water and National Parks have expressed concerns. But I wanted to state as a matter of principle that our council believes that something like this should only be considered if it has the support of traditional owners. So it goes beyond consultation. To me, it's not good enough just to consult. For something like this, and I suspect this may not get up, but for something like this to be considered, traditional owners should be in support. So I'm actually asking here for us as a council to state as a proposition that we would want more than consultation. This is and was and always will be traditional land, and traditional owners should be in support of something like this for it to proceed. So that's effectively what I put forward. Does the seconder wish to speak?
No, just that I totally agree with what you said, Mr. Mayor. The traditional owners, first and foremost, we have to get their permission, and then if it's worthwhile, we'll proceed with it.
Councillor McGregor.
No, I fully support it, Mr. Mayor, and it's precisely the reason that we entered into a new deal with the Gunnedah traditional owners.
Thank you.
I think your mayoral minute
Thank you.
honors that agreement.
Is there anything further? All right, I'll put the matter, and in putting the matter, can I thank Auntie Sharon and David King, with whom I've had conversations about this. Tonight, by passing this, we make a very strong statement about traditional land, about how much we value traditional owners, and by saying that if something like this is considered, whether it's this or something else, their support, not just some box ticker, but their support is critical and absolutely must be in place before it's considered. I want to repeat what I said a moment ago. This is a really special place to traditional owners, and it is, and it was, and it always will be Aboriginal land. With that, I'll put it, all those in favour? Against, and I'm really proud to say I declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Condolence motion for Jack Mundy. It's moved by me and seconded Councillor Hoare. Can I thank Councillor Hoare for asking me to bring this forward. It will be revealed to the public later on that Mr. Mundy had some collaborators on this council, one of whom was in fact for a short time jailed with him. That revelation will perhaps come forward later tonight, and someone in our community who was perhaps well thought of will now be seen in a different light, and hopefully be even more well thought of. I just want to say very briefly that I met Jack Mundy, and I don't want to talk about that because it's not about us, it's about Jack Mundy. Jack Mundy bridged the gap between the Green movement and the Labor movement, being a union leader and a member of the Greens. He was also a noted communist in his day, but more than that, he was a leader and he was a moral leader. There are vast places in the Sydney area and beyond that wouldn't be here for us to see and enjoy were it not for the bravery and the principle that Jack Mundy embodied. I just want to say that I believe Jack Mundey was a great Australian. I believe, and the reason I bring this forward tonight is that some of the values we as a council espouse around protection of the environment, our campaign against overdevelopment, which is embodied in our LEP, our embracing of rights of nature, all of the things that you've all been involved in a way, I think, echo that spirit that leaders like Jack Mundey called on us to recognise. So I think it is important that we pass a condolence motion recognising that a great Australian has left the stage, but a great Australian who leaves a tradition and a legacy for us all to be mindful of. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Over a long period of time, and his loss is indeed a very sad one in all of his great achievements. But look, I just want to bring to the council's attention a remarkable little exhibition that was put on by the police, the Historic Houses Trust and the Police and Justice Museum of that trust, that I was very, very honoured to share a part with Jack Mundey, and it was displayed in 1998. This is a little booklet that both Jack and I authored some essays or brief essays in. But I think a fitting tribute is provided by the then director, Peter Watts of the Historic Houses Trust. I'll just, if I may, read a couple of paragraphs from his director's foreword in Jack's memory. Between 1971 and 1974, the Progressive New South Wales Builders Labourers Federation helped rescue many special parts of Sydney from inappropriate development. Disregarded by many as a villain, the then State Secretary of the BLF, Jack Mundey, now carries the mantle of being a national living treasure, plus several honorary doctorates. He is also the chairman of the Historic Houses Trust. All of these accolades reflect the gratitude of a community who are the beneficiaries of the important people's protest movement he led. It could not be more appropriate then that the trust that he now leads should devote an exhibition to a subject so close to his heart. As a society, Peter Watts goes on, we must not allow ourselves to become complacent. The protest movements of the last 30 years have left us a legacy of important legislation, statutory mechanisms, and other means to protect the environment. But to imagine that this curtails the need for community involvement and vigilance is a delusion. We need look no further than Circular Quay to see how a whole raft of measures failed to achieve an appropriate solution for this very special place. Ordinary citizens need to remain concerned, active, and vigilant. I think that last remark was about the toaster, which was at the time a very controversial development. But look, I'd just like to conclude with the concluding paragraph of Jack's essay, if I might briefly say that concerned citizens, this is Jack's essay, concerned citizens will always have to use the courts, heritage and regulatory authorities to state their concerns. At the same time, protest action must forever remain an instrument which can be used when necessary if the regulatory and government bodies fail their obligations to society. Democracy consists of more than casting a ballot paper once every 3 or 4 years. Genuine democracy is everyday democracy, taking up and fighting for social justice and environmental issues whenever they arise. The record of the Green Bands, the New South Wales Builders Labourers Federation, bears testimony to how grassroots public participation can help protect and extend rights and enrich the whole democratic process in environmental protection. And look, I have to say, I've tried to live my life very much according to Jack's wisdom, even long before I met him, and certainly in the years after. And it's a very proud tradition that that as an elected politician, I'm very proud to uphold, and I hope that many who come after us will also do so. Thank you.
Thank you. The councillor's time's expired. I thank you, Councillor Hall. You may go back on mute. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first met I first became aware of Jack Mundy in the mid-60s while I was working on high-rise buildings in Perth. I was a member of the Builders Federation in Western Australia at the time and was aware of what he was doing to reform the union in New South Wales. It was a tough industry at that time. There were shocking safety records. There were corrupt developers. There were crooked unions. And overseeing it all was the extremely corrupt court government in Western Australia. And the majority of builders' labourers were poorly treated migrant workers, Mediterranean migrants mainly.
You
At
might
that
pull your
time.
microphone towards your mouth, Councillor McGregor. It drops out every now and then.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, as I was saying, the majority of builders' labourers at the time were poorly treated migrant workers, mainly from Mediterranean countries. Most of us would be aware of the kind of racism and hostility that was directed towards them, and that was particularly strong in the building industry. I arrived back in Sydney while Jack was in the process of cleaning up the New South Wales branch. I knew him mainly through campaigns to end conscription and Australia's involvement in the undeclared war in Vietnam. And again, I came across Jack in the 1970s when the BLF placed a green ban on the Western Distributor that was about to rip through the town that I was living in, Glebe at the time, and destroy the inner city in a very thorough manner. Jack wasn't alone in that. The support came for both from the union and from Neville Wran, and that eventually led to us saving Glebe, Annandale, and Lilyfield from destruction. I'm afraid it didn't save them forever from destruction. With WestConnect going through parts of it now. When I heard of his passing, I recall spending some fairly uncomfortable hours with him in the cells at Central Police Station following our arrest at a hastily convened demonstration. The demonstration was protesting the recent bombing of Hanoi and Haiphong Harbour in Vietnam that created a firestorm that killed many, and the only that bombing from high-level B-52s was only stopped when the Vietnamese adapted the surface-to-air missile, so they could reach the B-52s, and they pulled a fair few of them out of the sky. About 6 of us were identified for arrest by the chief spook. They always had a guy who would point out the radicals in the crowd, and the others, because they were well-known communists, union leaders, and some student leaders from SDS at Sydney University. And me, little me, because I was carrying half a dozen eggs home for dinner. And the special branch thought I was going to use them to mount an assault on the US consulate at the time. It was not an intention of mine. So I went without my dinner. Well, Jack went on to lead the BLF and make the building industry a safer, more rewarding place to work, and giving builders' labourers the dignity that they had previously been denied. Jack never took a backward step, whether it was in opposition to racially selected rugby tours, and again I joined him in demonstrations there, women's rights, Indigenous rights, or saving heritage housing and urban green space through the green bans. He changed forever the idea that workers were just a resource to be used for the boss's enrichment.
The Speaker's time has expired and
And
eloquently.
there was, just a moment, there was a social dimension, and that there was a social dimension to work, and that workers should have a say over the use their labour was put to and the social value that it delivered. Wherever people gathered to fight for a better, fairer world, it's there you'll find Jack Bundy. Rest in peace, comrade.
Thank you very much, Don. Councillor McGregor, anything further? All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? I believe it's carried unanimously. Yeah, good. Mayoral Minute number 5 is moved by me and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I want to credit conversations with 2 people for this Mayoral Minute. One was Councillor Schreiber and the other one was Dr. Rosemary Dillon. Councillor Schreiber and I had a conversation that he initiated about the old RED scheme that's long gone, but was introduced in the years in the early 70s. I don't want to embarrass him by saying was the Whitlam government, but it was introduced in the early 70s, and it saw investment in councils so that councils could do good works locally and employ people through that state and federal investment in the council. The money went to employing people to doing good things. This gave particularly young people important skills and allowed good works to occur within a community. Interestingly, and Councillor Schreiber and I had this conversation, and he said to me, "Wouldn't it be good if there was something like that now? We should pursue it." And I said to him, I thought that he was right. The following day, Dr. Rosemary Dillon had a conversation with me where she made exactly the same points and said to me, "Mr. Mayor, I'd actually like to pursue the possibility of achieving state and federal investment in our local government so that we can create opportunities for people and do good works for our community." Now, I said to Dr. Dillon that Councillor Schreiber and I had a similar discussion and suggested we put together a Mayoral Minute so that we effectively back that idea and enable our CEO to actually initiate some of those talks. Now, we've gone through, and we've said this already tonight, the bushfires, the devastating impact they've had on our economy and our community. We have gone through the floods and now COVID-19, and that's not over yet, and the devastating impact that has had on our community. I think we all know that recovery from calamitous events often requires the injection of public money to create good things and create activity. So I think that this is something we should pursue. Even if nothing comes of it, we should pursue it. And so I present this Mayoral Minute to you tonight so that those ideas that arose in those discussions I've just disclosed to you can actually be pursued and reported back to you all further. If there is a will to say to our council, state or federal or both, we'll invest X amount in you, we could create jobs, create opportunities for local people and do good works. And so I hope that this will gain your support tonight. I think it's an idea that's well worth exploring. Can I ask if there's any commentary or opposition? Councillor Brown.
Yes, I mean, I support this because it's interesting. It's Councillor Liberal who suggested it, because it's going a little bit toward something that a value that the Greens have sort of quietly had and have got a bit stronger on, and that's the idea of a jobs guarantee that, you know, really pre-1970, I think it was 1972, we did have the idea of full employment in this country. And I think this is not going all that way, but the idea that it is of great worth for government to create jobs, and I don't think there's a better place to create them than local government, because there's so much work at that level. There's such a diverse range of work that is available through the council, and that can have such an immediate impact on local economies and on, you know, well-being and all those things. But I think behind it, what I like behind this is continuing to push on that idea. Guess what? If you can find money for the JobKeeper and you can find twice as much as you then say you need, you probably can find money to create jobs that that actually provide greater amenity, greater service, everything that will improve our societies, and is always going to be better than having people unemployed. And I think I agree with it, because I think that local government is a place where we have the facility to do it quite quickly. We've always got a whole list of things that could be done if we had more resources and more people to do them. So I think, you know, it sort of, for me, it ties with that value that I do believe that people, there should be a job for everyone who wants one. And I think that local government's got a great facility in doing that, and the government can actually, you know, it's better to be doing that than creating an economy that's drying up and that's forcing people. Once you put money into the local economy, you're actually going to generate a prosperous, that money then goes into businesses, it goes everywhere. So it's in the interests of government to do it anyway. It's in the interest to have people as taxpayers not needing benefit. So I support this as a small part of that. I see it as a little thin end of that wedge. Thank you.
I should just, by way of explanation, I shouldn't verbal Councillor Schreiber. This is a bit different to what he was suggesting, but in fact, he's not here. I don't know if he entirely agrees with it, but I just wanted to credit the conversation that I had with him and Dr. Dillon in helping to inspire what I've brought forward here tonight. But his compassion for creating jobs is certainly a passion that I think I share, Dr. Dillon shares, I think all of you share. I would hope this resolution is somewhat unifying, and thank you for your words, Councillor Brown. Councillor Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I'd just like to point out that research done by the Australian Local Government Association many years ago now showed that the RED scheme and other schemes that operated through local government had the lowest overheads of any scheme run through government departments at any level of government. So it's the right place to put the money to get it to the people who get employed under those schemes. That's the only point I want to make.
Thank you. Is there anything further? If not, I've got one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Item mayoral minute number 6, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Not exactly on this day, but about 12 years ago, the Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, rose in the House of Representatives and spoke words that the nation had long, I think, hoped to hear. He said, "I'm sorry." I spoke with him about that some years later. I was with him at a function here in the Blue Mountains, and I remarked to him that that speech for me went down as one of the great speeches of my lifetime because of its significance, that the Redfern speech stand out. And he said to me, he said, "Mark, what's interesting about the apology isn't that I made it. What's interesting and moving about the apology is that it was accepted." And he went on to say to me that the incredible good grace and forgiveness shown by Aboriginal Australians, Indigenous Australians, in the face of incredible tyranny, years and years of pain that hasn't stopped, really blew him away. The grace that came from the first Australians, despite all that had happened and continues to happen. And I do think it's important that governments at all levels, local, state and federal, and Australians generally, reflect each year on Sorry Day about how much work we still have to do and the journey we still have to walk. together towards reconciliation. Personally, I'm someone who would support a treaty. But reconciliation is something that is an incredibly important part of Australia's heart. And it's something that we have a long way to go to achieve. So today, as the mayor of a local government, I repeat the words that were spoken on that day. And I am sorry. I am sorry for all of the injustice that has happened in our name over many, many years to the first Australians. And on this day, sorry day, I think it's important that we all pause for just a moment and reflect. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with your sentiments there, and I'm so proud of this council and what we have done over the last 20 years for our Indigenous community here in Blue Mountains. I'm very proud of the fact that we're one of the few local governments that have been leading the way in what we've been doing with our Indigenous people and recognising the traditional owners. So thank you very much for bringing the mayoral minute, and totally agree with everything you've said.
All right, does anyone else wish to speak? I'm going to take Councillor McGregor. Councillor McGregor. Are you there, Councillor McGregor? Yep.
Yep, I'm there. Sorry, didn't unmute. Thanks for your good words, Mr. Mayor, and I do agree that even this council owes an apology to what was done to First Nations people in our area in the fairly recent past, and that generosity of spirit that was offered in accepting the apology in 2007 is again repeated and on offer with the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which this government is remiss in not accepting.
Thank you. Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just wish to speak in support of this motion. I think there's no greater challenge before us on the ethnic and cultural spectrum than achieving reconciliation with the Indigenous people of this land, the First Nations. It's indeed sorry business, it's unfinished business. And I just wish to note that this week, it's the 20th anniversary of the March for Reconciliation across the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It happened on May the 28th in the year 2000. And I'm very proud to say that I was there with my baby daughter at the time, who's now 21. And it's still, yet the issues that we marched for back in those days are very much still as alive and in pressing need of addressing as they were then. I'd like to thank Councillor McGregor for highlighting the unfinished business of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. We have a long road to travel down this path, and it's I'm proud to be part of a council that I think is leading the way, and we certainly have much more work to do to progress the agenda of reconciliation and achieving true justice and a recognition of the shared history of this land. That it's my honour to teach it, I have to say. I've had a Year 8 lesson today, and there were kids astounded in the class to learn the things that I was imparting. So it's yeah, I live this professionally and politically, and it's it's a great honour to be part of this ongoing march towards a better place. Thank you.
Councillor Hollywood. Thanks, Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Thanks. I'd like to begin by saying sorry. And on a day like this, it's really disturbing to continue to read stories in the newspaper of funding cuts to Aboriginal organisations that are working with children and young people to try to keep Aboriginal children with their families. And I would just like to recognise that way too many Aboriginal children and young people are growing up in out-of-home care. And that is a sign quite often of what we have done as a community over many years through the stolen generations. There are 40% of Aboriginal children are living in out-of-home care. Out of the population of children living in out-of-home care, 40% are Aboriginal. And yet the statistics show that the overall percentage of the population in New South Wales is 5% Aboriginal. So we have an enormously long way to go. I do think that our council does what we can, but I think we can always do more. And that means listening to our Aboriginal Advisory Council, paying tribute to the work that they do. And that's voluntary work. And quite often we forget that Aboriginal community leaders have an enormous pull on the demands that people want to consult, and that actually creates a lot of what can I say, demands on people's time. And so the generosity that's been acknowledged here, I pay tribute to as well, to the generosity of our Aboriginal elders in our community and to the families and the children and young people who will come up and take their place. We do need to work with our Aboriginal community here in the Blue Mountains. And I think one opportunity is the Lawson Parklands project, which is the subject of an ILUA as well. And what I've learned, and this is why we have so much more that we need to do, is that people didn't really understand what an ILUA was. And I spend a lot of time, in consultation with elders, but also talking with the community about what an ILUA actually is. So we still have much to do as white folk to right the wrongs of the past. And so I end by saying sorry.
Anything further? If not, there's one matter before us and I'll put it. All those in favour? And I'm proud to say that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much. All right. We don't have members of the public to address this at the moment. You have seen one submission from the public that's been circulated. What I'll now do is go through the remainder of the business paper and withdraw those items upon which people wish to speak. And I will start at a certain point of my screen and move through you all. So I'll start with Councillor Fell. You're the first one appearing to my left. Which items would you wish to withdraw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The items I would wish to withdraw would be 14, 17,
Yes.
supplementary 2,
Yes.
21
Yes.
and 22. And just to foreshadow that there are 2 confidential items that did you want me to put, which are number 20 and number 8, they might as well be recorded now.
Yeah, I'm going to take some guidance from the executive officer in a moment, but certainly I think. Look, no, we'll pull out confidential item 20 and 18, and we will deal with those in confidential sessions that they're out. Thank you, Councillor Fell. Councillor Hollywood. If you don't have anything to pull out, just shake your head. Yep. Yeah, just so I don't have to wait for the microphone. If you've got nothing to pull out, just shake your head. I can see you. Councillor McGregor. It's out. You're fine. Councillor Bowling. Thank you. Councillor Vanderklay.
Number 5, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Brown. You wish to pull anything out, Councillor Brown?
Yes, I think number 6 and 7, I had some questions, and number 13.
Yes.
I think that's
it.
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Miles? Nothing. Councillor Christie? You wish to pull anything out, Councillor Christie? You're content? Thank you, sir. Councillor Hua? You're content. Councillor Fernanda? You're content. All right, thank you very much. I'll just set a note here. The confidential item papers are 20 and 8. I believe earlier I said 18. That is not a confidential item and it has not been pulled out, but item number 8 has. So the items that have been pulled out for discussion before us, I'll now deal with the items that will move in globo. They are item 4, item 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 18, S1, 19. So I have a mover for those, the Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Miles. All those in favour of those in globo items? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And I'll now move to item number 5. Who pulled this out? Councillor Vanderklay. You wish to move the recommendations as a resolution?
I'll move the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded Councillor Bowling. Thank you, Councillor Bowling. Councillor Vanderklay has the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a new step from Blue Mountain City Council in the process, and in that process we will be dismantling basically Blue Mountain's economic enterprise and running it from within inside council. I want to personally, and I'm going to ask you, Mr. Mayor, whether with this that you'll be writing to the board and Mr. Luscombe and thanking them for their service for many years on Blue Mountain's economic enterprise and previous directors, because they did a tremendous job trying to bring organisations like universities, and they had tremendous work that they did with the bushfire recovery in 2013 and in through that process. And one of the greatest things that they've been able to do is the Blue Mountains cluster, the creative industries cluster. Fantastic work with that. And of course, Blue Mountains branding and so forth. And we've been hit just recently with the bushfires and of course now COVID-19, but things have overtaken them with the cities deal, and we're going to get more, there's going to be more things coming out of that, and we need to be involved with that. And so Blue Mountains economic enterprise is now past its prime. So I want to thank them personally as being on the board and all the councillors' support over the years for doing this, and recommend the recommendations to council.
Yes. Any further comments? Councillor Brown.
Oh, I'm talking already. Just first of all, I've got 2 questions. Is the MOU between the council and BMATA already signed? Is that
the CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's not.
Oh, okay. It just read like have a destined. It said they have one. Oh,
Sorry, Councillor Brown. She's answered that question.
yeah. So, okay, but it's in the works because it reads as if it's already there.
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a memorandum of understanding developed for the destination marketing campaign that was agreed between various parties, and that may be what's being referred to.
Okay.
And we're currently in the process of working with BME on the MOU for the
with
transition.
Martha. Yeah, yeah.
Did you wish
The
to
second
speak, Councillor Brown?
question- The second question was on page 22. It talks about board renewal and board remuneration. I wasn't sure what board we're talking about. I mean, I know with the advisory committee they'd be remunerated. But I wasn't sure. We're saying giving consideration to board members being paid ensures greater accountability. And then,
Thanks, Councillor Brown. But just keep it to the questions. We've got the report in front of us.
Yeah.
CEO, do you want to answer that question, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, they're just referring to governance lessons, and they're basically saying that council might want to give consideration in the future for having board members that they are paid to ensure greater accountability in terms of their performance. So it's just a suggestion. We may or may not take it up with the Economic Advisory Panel. I'll just see if Mr Parsons would like to add to what I've said. Mr Parsons?
Through you, CEO. That's correct. It's just a review of the existing arrangements. So it's just giving us comment on what's gone before, just to inform potentially what would happen in the future.
So
Okay.
to be clear, nothing we do tonight will afford remuneration to board members.
okay.
Any
So I'll
further,
just speak,
Councillor Brown?
yeah, I'll just speak to it now.
Yep.
Look, I think I really support it. I think the great work that that Councillor Schreiber has done is acknowledged, and the potential of that with the Merrill Business Reference Group, and how important it is that we've now built or rebuilt those links with the business community through that. And the staff are doing wonderful work, I think, with that Merrill Reference Group. So I think it's great that they've really picked up on what a role that reference group can play, and I congratulate Councillor Schreiber for getting that happening. I really also think that this rebuilding, again, that a partnership with Blue Mountains Tourism, BMATA, is great. It's just so good to see that happening, because I think that was, we've really had that missing through this term of council, and so I'm very pleased to see that happening. And I just, and yeah, just building that sort of partnerships across, you know, the government, local government, and business and stakeholders. I also just noticed, and I think it comes through really strongly, there's some really messages here that keep getting repeated about reporting, that the communicating, being transparent, reporting, accountability, and leadership from council. Those are they keep getting repeated through this report. And I think, so there's a sort of there's something coming out of this quite strongly from their consultation with stakeholders, that they do want council involved, that they want to know what council's doing, they want to be communicated with, they want to be consulted with. So transparency and all those things. And so I like it, because I feel it's quite an, you know, it's very positive and very practical what's suggested, but it's identified where we need to enhance and strengthen what we do. So yeah, I support it and I think it's great.
Anything further? Councillor Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wish to speak briefly to thank very deeply all of those involved in what I understand has been a very difficult reform process. The momentum that BMEE has gathered, it hasn't been insubstantial, and the changes that are proposed are healthily disruptive, but it's a difficult initiative to undertake. But I'm sure it will deliver us some very, very strong economic outcomes. So I just wish to put on record my thanks to the board and the leadership team of BMEE, and particularly I wish to acknowledge the fantastic and really world-leading work that they've done in establishing the bushfire exhibition and bushfire building conference and exhibition over the last few years, and to put on record again how pleased I am to see that work will be continued by council. It's extremely important to all those who live in bushfire affected areas, not just here, but around the world. And having participated on the sidelines of that event for the last few years, I can certainly attest to what a tremendous value it is to all of the professionals in that field who are brought together under the auspices of BMEE, and I'm very proud that Council will now continue that tradition. Thank you.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I am going to be voting in favour of this motion. Councillor Brown kind of stole my thunder there when thanking Councillor Schreiber and acknowledging all his hard work he's done with the reference group. But I also wanted to acknowledge the staff's work with Councillor Schreiber on the reference group and all the hard work they've done together in working with the chambers across the whole city to implement strategies across the mountains. And particularly with BMEE and their terms of reference, somewhere where I really think that they let us down was diversifying our economy. We are and always will be a tourism reliant economy, but unfortunately they didn't make much leg room in diversifying our economy, which would have made us more shockproof in terms of natural disasters such as bushfires and now COVID. But hopefully I look forward to the work that this new body can do in diversifying our economy and making us more resilient as a community and as an economy.
Thank you. Anything further? There being nothing, there's one matter before us. I'll put it all as in favour. Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 6, who pulled this out? Councillor Brown, you wish to move something? Councillor Brown hasn't moved anything. Councillor Vanderklay moves and Councillor Bolling seconds the report. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, look, I think my concern here, that's really more a concern.
Do you have a question or do you wish to speak?
I just want to speak to where the one thing that worries me.
All right, we'll start the clock. Councillor Brown has the floor.
The one thing that worries me is that I feel the delivery program is, we're building this premise that we have to delay, we're delaying programs because to be fit for the future and so on. But somehow we're not looking, for me, I feel we're not looking at the fact that interest is so low at the moment. And as a council, we can get such low loans. So it's almost like this internal pressures that we have. We keep insisting on how, we mustn't be borrowing, we must be reducing debt. And I find that puzzling because at the moment, this is the time when you can have debt because it doesn't cost, it costs so little. I mean, they're even talking about, I don't even understand the idea of negative interest. So my real issue is just that I actually don't feel this is a time to go slow. I feel that this is a time for us to get things done, both through obviously trying to secure this grant money that we are hearing about, and I think some of it's come through, been announced again today. But also, and I do agree with the business plan issue, that we need to have business plans when we're going to do something. I've always believed that you must have business plans, but I would really encourage us to be doing that, to not be overly cautious at a time when, I've said it again and again, money is as cheap as it's ever been. So we can do things with an intergenerational scope on them, while it is possible not to have a huge burden when you borrow money. So that's just, yeah, I said I am supporting it, but I just had that, I had that constant feeling that I'd rather we were being a bit more ambitious.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I have a question through the CEO to Ms. Ryzak. How much a year are we saving in debt servicing costs as compared to when we commenced reducing it at the beginning of my mayoral term? I think I heard a figure of 7 million a year. I want to check if that's right.
So, Ms. Ryzak?
Through the CEO, yes, it's a substantial saving in both interest and debt servicing costs.
Yeah, was 7 million a year about right?
I think so, yes.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question.
Now, I've got next, the call now goes to Councillor Vanderklay, the mover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I understand where Councillor Brown is coming along. We're having trouble getting all our programs delivered at the present moment with all the restrictions that we have, and the amount of grant money that we've got, we're having trouble just getting all of those jobs done without borrowing more money, putting us into more debt, which means we'll be paying off more and more interest over the longer period. One of the things that the previous councils have done was to reduce our debt from close on $60 million to a manageable measurement that we can handle now. And it was one of the things that we did, and we were still able to deliver a lot of the programs with the money that we saved. So borrowing money is not always good. I totally support the present program, and I don't feel that this council should go and borrow large amounts of money to build more infrastructure, which is going to cost us a lot more money. At the end of the day, we've got a very balanced program, and we should be carrying on doing that, not borrowing more money. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Christie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a series of questions, if that's all right.
How many?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
I'll make them short and sweet.
Yeah, and can I just ask, given the length of the business paper, we keep our answers punchy too. Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can all other councillors, sorry, Councillor Christie, can all other councillors not on mute, please go on mute. Councillor Christie has the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of supporting our community through the COVID-19 crisis, has council considered not accepting the 2.6% rate peg this year?
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we haven't.
But Councillor Christie will be open to you to move that way at any time. Next question.
Yep. In the fees and charges, I understand that we are approximately increasing our intake by 1.7%. Does council have a rough figure of what the amount will be taking overall, the percentage increase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Ryzak.
Was that, sorry, could you repeat the question?
The overall increase for the fees and charges, I believe, was 1.7% overall. Does council have the amount that will be increasing fees by, like the overall intake for the council?
What we make from that?
I'd have to take that on notice.
Just in addition to Councillor Christie's question, Ms. Ryzak, what's inflation running at the moment? About 2%, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Christie.
Thank you. With the parks and sports ground fees, did the sporting clubs and were they consulted on the increase above CPI for player registration fees?
Can I just jump in, Councillor Christie? There hasn't been an increase yet. All we're doing is putting this out in public exhibition. So that's the point at which they'll be consulted when they see it, and we'll take their input into the vote when it finally happens. So let's be clear, there is no increase as a result of this. It's just public exhibition, so we can consult. Did CEO want to add to that question?
Yeah. No, Mr. Mayor, but we have to take on notice and get back to him on that.
That'd be good. Thank you.
I can assist, Mr. Mayor.
No, Councillor Christie hasn't finished yet. Councillor Miles. Councillor Christie.
No, that's satisfied. I'll hold the other two.
Okay. Councillor Miles. Question or speak?
Just to assist with Councillor Christie's question about the sporting clubs, they were consulted via the Sports Council.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. Councillor Brown with a question. Councillor Brown with a question.
Sorry. With this 6 million we're saving,
7.
is that also including the fact that the interest rates have gone down? So we're actually paying less because we're paying much less interest. Is that part of what we're saving?
You're talking about the $7 million we're saving on debt service.
$7 million we're saving on debt. Does that include the fact that the interest has gone down? So we're actually paying less because interest payments are less.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the interest rates are often locked in on the loans, so it's not about them going down when interest rates goes down. There are loans that might have been developed 15, 20 years ago, and the 7 million relates to both principal and interest.
Thank you.
Oh, right. So,
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah, you seek it's Councillor Brown. You seek the call from me. Yeah, how many more questions?
One.
Yeah, thank you.
The business improvement program, is that the same procurement and safety program, or is that a different one?
On mute now, Councillor Brown.
Have I got the call, Mr Mayor?
Yes, you do see
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure exactly which page you're referring to, but for a number of years now, we've had a focus on business improvement. So it's just what we continuously improve the business. We have a particular program that helps to improve all our key service areas and work processes and procedures. So was there any other part to your question? Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown.
I think that's right. So would that be so that's now the business improvement that's done through Mr Parsons' department, is that right? Is that where it sits?
Look, through you, Mr Mayor, the whole council's focused on business improvement, but it's driven by the directorate that's under the leadership of Hayley Ryzak and Patrick Hallahan.
Mute if you're not speaking, councillors. Anything further on this matter? All right. Councillors, there's one matter before us, and that is that we put the proposal out for public exhibition so that the community can comment. I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Declare it carried unanimously. And just note on item number 15, Councillor Fell should be marked as being out of the room. Item number on item number 5, Councillor Fell should be marked as being out of the room. All right, councillors, item number 7, who pulled this out? Okay, it's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Bowling. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Councillor Brown.
I might just be misunderstanding something, but the question through you, probably through the General Manager, the user fees and charges, I couldn't understand how we had a higher figure than was projected for the year. We already had a year to date that was a higher figure than projected for the year. That's on page 10.
CEO.
It's the user charges and fees. I'm just...
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Brown.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll have to refer that to Ms Ryzak.
Ms Ryzak.
Page 10 of the enclosure, Hayley.
Yeah, through the CEO.
Councillor Brown, mute if you could. We can hear pages flicking. It's drowning everyone else out. Thank you. Ms Ryzak.
The increase to the user fees and charges, it's actually a reduction in user fees and charges. We've gone from 17.8 million down to 16.8 million, and that reduction is due to our closed facilities. So there's a reduction in caravan park, commercial properties and regulatory fees.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, then the next...
Councillor Brown, do you seek the call?
Well, it's the same question. I'm not understanding the answer.
Yep, seek clarification through me.
Yes, I'm trying to clarify that. Then the next column, it says 22.673 million. So the actual year-to-date figures are higher than the projected. That's the bit I'm not understanding.
Through the CEO to Ms. Ryzak.
Ms. Ryzak.
Through the CEO. So the budget figures are phased quarter by quarter, and the year to date, what we're doing is adjusting the budget down because we know the year end figures are going to be lower than the actual figures.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 8, we resolve to move to confidential session later in the meeting. It's moved Councillor Bowling, seconded Councillor Miles. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. They were dealt with in confidential session. Item number 13, Councillor Brown, you wish to move something? You're on mute still, Councillor.
Is that the gully plan?
It is.
Yes, I have an amendment for that.
Well, there's no motion on the table
yes,
yet.
so I'll move the motion with a small amendment to it.
Well, whatever you move's the motion. And councillors should note that the change to what Councillor Brown is moving was sent to you earlier tonight. So it's with the addition of the 40 days consultation. So Councillor Brown moves that way. Is it seconded? It's seconded, Councillor Van der Clay. Councillor Brown, would you mind if I asked Mr. Langeveld for advice? He's seen the resolution you've moved. Before I get you to speak, would you mind if I seek his advice?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I appreciate that. Councillor Brown, I do appreciate that. And Mr. Langeveld, if you could comment on the motion that's before us.
Through the CEO, councillors, the placement of the Gully Aboriginal Place draft plan management on exhibition is a statutory process under the Local Government Act, and there are 4 recommendations that enable that process to continue. The first point to make is that each of those resolutions is in fact necessary to make the plan of management. The third recommendation is that a public hearing be held. That's mandatory under the Local Government Act. This resolution appears to maintain the first recommendation, which is to place it on public exhibition, but then proposes some form of public meeting. It is necessary that those other recommendations be maintained for the process. The third point I'd like to make, which is important, is that the Gully Co-Management Agreement applies to this land, and it's informed the consultation with traditional owners. We've spoken with traditional owners about the form of consultation that's proposed, so any change to that really needs to be discussed and endorsed with the Gully traditional owners. If councils have a mind to hold the public meeting, I'd suggest it'd be better to defer the item to enable that consultation with the traditional owners to occur, and also to ensure that whatever recommendation or resolution we make allows the plans to be legally made under the Local Government Act.
Councillor Brown, would you be content to defer your motion until the next meeting of council so that that consultation can take place and we can make sure this is done fully, properly and respectfully?
Yep, that would be fine. That sounds like...
Councillor Brown moves and Councillor Van der Clay seconds this matter be deferred for one meeting cycle to enable the consultation Mr. Langeveld has just outlined to take place. And Councillor Brown foreshadows that at the next council meeting, the motion she's outlined tonight will come forward. Have I got you right, Councillor Brown?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. And Councillor Van der Clay, you're seconding that? Yeah. Can I thank the councillors for listening to that explanation, Mr. Langeveld, for his advice. I know we all want to get this right and leave absolutely no one behind. This is a special place. And so with that, I'll put the deferral. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 14, who pulled this out? That's Councillor McGregor. You wish to move something. and it's seconded Councillor Hollywood. And while Councillor McGregor takes his microphone off mute, I'll just draw councillors' attention to the difference between what Councillor McGregor's moving tonight, what's recommended by the staff. You will have received earlier this evening some words that amount to a no forced redundancies provision to protect our workers in accordance with our council's redeployment processes. That's the difference. Councillor McGregor has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and as you've outlined, the reason for this is to avoid forced redundancies. I understand that we've got a redeployment plan in place that the union is in agreement with, and so in the interest of in workers confronted with unemployment at this particularly dire time, and particularly for older and largely unskilled workers, that's amounts to a virtual sentence of permanent unemployment, in my opinion. But we normally wouldn't choose to intervene in the operational level of council, and so really it's put forward in the as a matter of principle rather than as a direction to staff. Thanks.
Before I ask the seconder to speak, I might just exercise some discretion from the chair to explain to councillors. I've had 2 conversations with the United Services Union about the wording here, including today, and they are happy and content. I also would like to thank the CEO and Ms. Toomey for the conversations I had with them in finalising these words with Councillor McGregor. Just so that people know, this came from a phone call to me from the union, a direct request, and we have met that request. Does the seconder wish to speak? No. Any further speakers? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'm very glad to hear all this has occurred. I think all the councillors got the letter from the union, and I replied that I certainly didn't support redundancies, forced redundancies. So I did have an amendment which is still in my draft folder. It didn't go through for some reason, but it's very similar to Councillor McGregor's anyway. So I absolutely support it. My amendment just had a little addition, which was just that also, if necessary, training would be available so that when people are redeployed, they may also be being upskilled. I just think keeping that in mind. So we really do make a commitment to that. I also think, there is a really strong principle here. I'm fine with the reduced hours. As a regular user of Katoomba Tip, I'm fine with reduced hours, and I think it makes sense. It's a sensible efficiency, but it's also coming out of the fact that we have spent something like 6 million cleaning up the Katoomba Tip, and so that we're looking to deal with that big hole in the waste account. And there would be something really unfair about the very people who have been in that tip and have been so much a part of the process of realising, of the whole asbestos saga. They are at the forefront of that. It would be such an injustice, given that they are the people who have been speaking out and been speaking out for a long time, that they would then end up being redundant through the cost of the cleanup. So I think there's quite a strong, I think in general, we should always be trying to redeploy our staff. We're a very important employer. It's what we're saying about we want the state government to put more money into local government jobs. And I think we should really be trying to always redeploy people when we can anyway. But I think particularly in this case, it's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anything further? being nothing, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. All right. Thank you very much. We now move to item number 17. Councillor McGregor, I believe you pulled this out to move, did you?
Yes, I believe I did, Mr. Mayor.
And it's seconded Councillor Fell. Councillor McGregor has the call.
Look, I have to apologise, Mr. Mayor. I pulled this out by error. I'm quite happy to move the recommendations, and I welcome the consultation that will come from them.
Yes. Councillor Fell, you content?
Broadly, yes. I would just say that I seconded this this motion just in full support of the creative strategy and of the document that's been produced, and just pass on my thanks to the staff for a very thorough job.
Yes, thank you.
And a great strategy that fits into the raft of strategies that we're developing. I think it's a great way to go for a really important part of our economy.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Anyone else wish to speak to this matter? I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. S2, I think that may have been you, Councillor McGregor. Seconded Councillor Fell. Councillor McGregor has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I just I move the recommendations, obviously, and
Yes.
and in doing so, I would like to thank the City of the Arts Trust Advisory Committee for the work they've done in getting this together in pretty quick time. They met maybe 4 or 5 times at short notice to get the program out there. By the time it finally got out there, the closing date was coming in on us for the publication of the business paper, and there were we only had 2 applications that we could carry forward. Both of them very good, I must say. And I look forward to the next round, which will come before you at the June meeting. There's already a pile of applications in there, and they look very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fell, you wish to say anything?
No, I don't really have anything to add other than to echo the gratitude that I hope we're all feeling for the hard work that's been done in preparing this response. It's great.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councillor Fell. Anyone further on this matter? There being one item before us, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Motion to put item 20 into confidential session. Moved Councillor Bowling, seconded Councillor Christie. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. So that will be dealt with confidential session at the end. Item number 21, it's a notice of motion stating the name of Councillor Brown. Is it seconded?
Yes.
Seconded Councillor Christie. Councillor Brown has the floor.
Yes, I have put this motion because I have first raised this in January. We're now in late May, and I raised it in January when we had a whole series of tenders going through, some of which certainly one of which I knew definitely had local people who hadn't even put in tenders for. That was for the $250,000 solar tender. There were footpaths, there were other quite a lot of several $1 million worth of tenders, and I pointed out then that we did have the capacity locally and there was something wrong. I then discovered that some of these tenderers didn't even know about the tender, which is not that we didn't do the right advertising, but they weren't sort of hooked into those processes and looking. And that concerned me because when I look at it, and I went through and saw in the first, I think, 4 months, we'd given away something like $3 or $4 million in tenders. We're not getting applications from local people. I'm quite, this response from the staff, I didn't find terribly courteous, and I was really concerned to say, oh, we have a briefing. I mean, one of the things that came out of the economic and tourism development strategy that we just got was about transparency and accountability, communicating with the public, communicating with stakeholders. The idea that we're going to have a briefing, sure, we need a briefing on this before we get the report, but we need a report to come to council on this. Even if it's to say, no, we don't want to do it, but that should be something that is in the business papers, that's publicly available. It's not just what the staff tell councillors behind closed doors. That really concerns me. And I just want to read out here, I don't know why we would think there are legal issues when Lismore has been doing it, certainly at least since 2008, probably earlier. And I think what was interesting about Lismore Council is they put a weighting of 10% in 2008. And by 2018, they'd made it 20% weighting for local procurement. So they haven't been sort of taken to court over that, and they've been doing it at least since 2008. So the suggestion that there's legal issues, I don't know what they are, because other councils, this isn't the only council that does it, but it's a good example. I'm just going to read, as a regional centre in country New South Wales, Lismore Council forms an integral part of the local economy in the region. One of Council's key strategic priorities is economic development with stated initiatives to support business and assist in job creation. Council seeks to meet these initiatives by measuring the amount of local content in its procurement activities. The use of local content in the selection criteria within procurement is an appropriate way to make an informed assessment of a submission's direct benefit to the local economy. The amount and/or type of local content is assessed using the selection criteria framework, coupled with the standard weighted score system of assessment. The objective of Council's local content considerations are to provide benefits to the local economy and Council's procurement processes, allow tenderers to easily and simply demonstrate the benefits of their bid to the local economy by using a standard tender schedule format, allow easy assessment by Council within the tender evaluation system, encourage suppliers from outside the Lismore City Council area to submit tenders by providing a transparent method of assessing local content. So someone outside can say, well, we're going to employ local people to do such and such work, and we're going to buy our materials. Promote the use of local contractors, materials and services. Have a fair and transparent system that addresses probity. Ensure tenders are evaluated on an equal footing. Local content will be weighted at a minimum of 20% of the selection criteria. The local content weighting can be higher than 20% if considered appropriate for the goods or services being procured. That's what Lismore do. It's very simple. It's clause 4. Why we feel that it's complex, I don't know. They also have an alert system. So they have an alert system, people can get on it, where they can be told when there's a tender coming up that their business might be appropriate for. So they've worked out a whole lot of mechanisms. We could learn from them, but I think that we need to have that as a report. The public need to know about it. It goes way beyond what our procurement process does at the moment. Our strategic procurement from 2019 barely mentions locals. There's one tiny little line about it.
5 seconds.
It's not coming through in what's happening with our tenders. Thank you.
Councillor's time's expired. Before I give the seconder the call, just note that as we've been advised, we're being briefed on a strategy that addresses these issues that may in fact result in a report, but time will tell. Does the seconder wish to speak? That's Councillor Christie. Do you wish to speak?
I'm content.
Thank you, Councillor Christie. Councillor Fell seeks the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel, and it's alluded to, I think, in the comment that you just made, it seems to me that we're kind of jumping the gun a bit here, in that the staff have committed to give us a briefing. So as a briefing on the, we're going to get a briefing very soon. The outcome of that is going to be a report. That report will be public. So it's just the normal sequence of events. And I don't see why there's a need to treat this in any other way. There are some legitimate concerns. I've heard a couple of concerns about it. Whether, in what way do you assess the impact, or the beneficial impact, hopefully, on the broader community. How's that worked out? The legal issues, like Councillor Brown, I don't know what they are, but I would rather know what they are before I start voting on a report. And so I really want to get this briefing, get the information, and I know that our staff have been looking at this issue for quite some time. I want to get that information. This is where it should come to. And I want the chance to be able to throw any concerns that I have or that are brought to me and that I put into the mix on behalf of constituents. I want to be able to have that interaction with the staff before there's a report. I just don't see why we have to rush into this. It just seems to be inappropriate to me, totally inappropriate.
Anything further? No, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown, I'll take you in reply when councillors have finished. I do know it's been spoken against. Councillor McGregor.
And I'm speaking against Mr. Mayor. We've gone through this a couple of times already. There is a briefing there for next month, in fact, where those legal issues will be explored by people who are professionally able to give us and qualified to give us legal advice. I wonder at the motives of bringing this up yet again.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Hollywood. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm nearly wanting to stand up. I just wanted to highlight I'm conscious that we are being webcast, and I wanted to highlight for not the benefit of the councillors, because I know you've all read the motion and the council officers' report, but for the benefit of the public who might be listening, the officers don't recommend this path. They actually say very clearly that the notice of motion is not supported. And they say very clearly that it's recommended that we are briefed on this in full about the current processes and future processes. Now, it does also involve legal advice around our tender processes being transparent. We are not the same as Lismore Council. We are a city within the greater metropolitan Sydney area, and I think that we need to consider all of the matters. I also want to say that this is not the first time that this has come forward, and in fact, we were briefed on motions where Councillor Brown had sought to defer actual tenders, and we got advice that that was not appropriate either. And I really wonder about why this is being pushed and pushed and pushed, and whether Councillor Brown is, I just don't know.
Councillor Hollywood, I'd caution you to go no further with that. It's not appropriate to reflect upon a councillor.
I'm getting really sick of this.
And Councillor Brown, I've got this, thank you. I'd ask you just to withdraw that last sentence, please.
I will withdraw that last sentence.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm speaking against the notice of motion for the very reasons that I'm accepting the advice on this occasion of the council officers, and the fact that we have been briefed regularly on other matters that have come before the council earlier this year.
Thanks. Can I ask the Deputy Mayor just to take the chair so that I may enter the debate? You'll need to go off mute.
Mr. Mayor, you have the chair. You have the
floor.
I have the chair. You can speak.
Yes, thank you. I support the principle of giving favour where appropriate to local tenders. I support the principles that sit behind this, and I would like to see us do something similar to what's being done at Lismore. However, I note the staff's advice that there are complexities, If we are going to do this, I want to do it right. So I do want to be briefed on those complexities. I do want to be briefed on the legal issues. And once we've got that information, we will be able to best chart our course to our goal. There's nothing wrong with having knowledge and getting it right, especially if this is something we passionately can support. And I would say that I'm in that camp. I want to get it right so that we do it right. And on that basis, I'm content to wait for the briefing and any report that may flow from that, or that we may bring to the council ourselves after being briefed. I do note also that the briefing is to occur in the month of June, so it isn't far off. On that basis, I won't support the notice of motion tonight, but I do support the general thrust of the principles espoused in the notice of motion. I'll resume the chair, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if that's okay.
You have the chair again, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Before I take the mover in reply, are there any further speakers? Okay, mover in reply.
Well, I'm actually going to move an amendment because there's something very peculiar here. You have all spoken as if when we call for a report, there isn't a briefing first, as I think everyone here should know. When we get a report, we usually, it is
Sorry,
absolutely...
Councillor Brown, I've just called you to order. You're either moving an amendment to your own motion,
well, I will move an amendment.
Speaking.
Yeah, I will
What
move
is the
an amendment that we receive a briefing as a precursor to receiving a report. Because that's what we normally get anyway, but I'm happy to spell it out.
I believe that's what's happening, but is the seconder accept that amendment to your own motion?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so I'll allow the councillor. Yes, allow the councillor to now speak and reply.
Well, really, that's the point, that I have never known us to get a report. It's very unusual for us to get a report and not get a briefing. And if there are legal issues that are different for us than for Lismore Council or for the other councils, I'm fine with that too. The point was never that we have to do, I didn't say I call that we do this. I called for a report on doing it, which is different. It's very different. It's not saying it needs to be done. It's saying I'm calling for a report on it. I have been asking about this since January and the staff have agreed that it's something that can and should be done. So I don't see why there's so much difficulty, but I'm very happy to spell it out and say we will call for a briefing as a precursor to having a report come to council. So that means everyone gets to hear it and they can discuss it with the staff. And if the report comes back and says it can't be done and these are the reasons, then that's what the report's going to say. But that's the process, and it is the normal process, and it is actually the process I'm asking for. I didn't think I needed to say a briefing as well as a report, but I'm happy to say that. So that's the amendment I move with Councillor Christie, that the council receive a briefing in June. Well, they've said that, so they receive the briefing in June as a precursor to a report.
Okay, Councillor, just a question before I put it to a vote. So you're essentially moving that we do what we're already doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been asking for it. I'm just making it there that we're going to do it, that it's not a matter of when, it's not something that staff have said they're going to do. I'm moving it as a councillor. This is what I think we need to do. That's right.
Right, thank you. There's one matter.
There's only two things that can happen. Either the staff can agree with it or they can disagree with it.
Councillor,
so I'm doing what the staff are agreeing with so that you will support it.
You've answered my question and you've spoken in reply, and I thank you for that. Councillors, because the mover amended her own motion and the seconder agreed, there's no amendment to put, just one motion. All those in favour of the motion, moved by Councillor Brown and Christie. Councillors Brown and Christie. All those against? Everybody else, with Councillor Hoare not voting. Councillor Hoare, you abstaining? What are you doing, Councillor Hoare? I'll call the vote again. Councillor Hoare, if you could indicate what you're doing. All those in favour of the motion.
Sorry, Mr.
No, Councillor Hoare, to assist you.
A little bit unsure what wording we're voting for.
Councillor Hoare, I'm going to call the vote again on Councillor Brown's motion. Please issue a vote or leave the room.
So has it been amended or?
It's one motion, Councillor Hoare. It's been spoken to, and the speaker in reply has has had her time. I'm not going over it again. You should be across it. All those in favour of Councillor Brown and Christie's motion? Councillors Brown and Christie. All those against? The rest. I declare it lost. Item number 22, Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor Fell. The recommendations. Councillor Hollywood has the floor. Councillor Hollywood is on mute. We can see you expressing your face and speaking, but can't hear you. Thank you.
I even got the button going and...
Evidently not.
Really not. I just got too excited. I just wanted to draw people's attention to the letter that has come in. I think it's correspondence number 6 from the Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment and Veterans New South Wales, James Griffin MP, and New South Wales MP, responding to our request to consider the Blue Mountains National Park as a dark sky park and to receive certification. I'm a little bit disappointed by the letter, as in, but also understand the reasons. Essentially in the letter, the Parliamentary Secretary says that at the moment, national parks and wildlife are too busy with the recovery process to be dealing with considering the Blue Mountains National Park as a dark sky park and going through the certification processes, which are very complicated. Having said that, he thinks that it's actually a really great idea. So what I wanted to say is I believe that there is a committee coming up potentially around how we're looking after our wildlife. And I would like to note that part of the reason why we're considering establishing the Blue Mountains National Park as a dark sky park is really to protect and support the recovery of our wildlife. So I wanted to highlight that, and maybe in the near future we can write back to both the Minister, obviously not appropriate to do that through this précis of correspondence, and also potentially ask the local director of the National Parks and Wildlife Service to come and talk to us about that, you know, in a few months or something like that. So I did want to draw people's attention to that. It's an extraordinarily well-supported concept to protect our starry skies and all of the benefits that flow for that for both human beings and also for our wildlife. So thank you.
Yes, and Councillor Hollywood, just for your edification, I believe we're the CEO. I'll look to the CEO to nod or shake her head, but I believe we'll be dealing with the formation of that committee at the next council meeting. She nods. And also note that it's open to you at any time in the future to bring forward a notice of motion relevant to dark skies. I'll ask you to go on mute now. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the précis? There being no one as one matter before us, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. I'll ask for some guidance, CEO, from you. Before we go into confidential session, I know it'll come to the end of the business paper, save for those items. Do we have any urgency motions tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not that I'm aware of. No.
All right. Then, because if we did, I was going to deal with them now. I'll just give the members of the public some guidance now. We're going to go into confidential session to deal with a couple of matters of a contractual and financial nature. We will be back on live stream after we've dealt with those matters, but just to close the meeting. There might be some comments on the adjournment debate. Sometimes there are, but you're entitled to, of course, to wait and see what happens when we come back. But it may just be to close the meeting. I'm going to ask the staff now to guide us into confidential session, given that we're in this electronic mode. I take it something's going to appear on our screens, and if we click on it, we go into confidential session. Am I right about that?
Mr. Mayor, vote to go into confidential session.
Yes. Well, we have actually dealt with the two items and said that they'll be dealt with in confidential session. So I'll seek a procedural motion that now occur. Let's move Councillor Miles and second to Councillor Hollywood. We proceed to confidential session. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Ms. Cooper, what do we do now? Okay, councillors in front of you, I think you click the button join. Thank you. The council returns to live streaming and public session. Now take a motion to close the meeting. It's moved Councillor Bowling, seconded Councillor Fell. Does Councillor Hollywood, did you have something to say on adjournment?
Yes, thank you. I know that it's been a big, long council meeting, but I would like to just acknowledge and pay tribute to the members of the Ida Hobbit Organising Committee. Ida Hobbit Council recognises International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Interphobia and Transphobia every year, and this is the 11th year that we have done so. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, and I think we managed to get through nearly this whole meeting without talking about COVID-19, but because of COVID-19 and the restrictions on gatherings, we weren't able to have our normal public ceremony, but we managed to find ways to recognise the day online. And part of that was having the flag raised safely by council officers and then raising that flag via our Facebook page on Sunday the 17th of May. And we also had a drag story time that was uploaded onto YouTube, and people could watch that. That's still there if people want to watch it. It's actually really gorgeous. And we also had dress up trivia via Zoom as well, which was lots of fun. So I would like to pay tribute to and thank the organising committee, and in particular the community groups, Pink Mountains, Thrive Family Services, ACON, and the staff of BMCC. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name them, but I thank Vicky Edmonds and Colin Berryman and the team, and also Peter Hackney and Martin Roberts, and Petra Dish and Martina Concepta. So I do thank everybody for their involvement. Also, PFLAG supported the event, and Radio Blue Mountains did a broadcast. So it is really important. We've had a social justice theme today around Sorry Day, but we also need to remember that we need to have a community where members of the LGBTIQA+ community also feel safe and included. So just wanted to mark that occasion publicly on adjournment. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Just anybody else on adjournment before I close the meeting, put it to the vote? No. I don't know where they sit on everyone else's screen, but Councillors Hoare and Miles sit one above the other on my screen, and it's disturbing to me that they're beginning to grow to look a little bit alike. And I'll just leave the room with that and put it that we close the meeting. All in favour of the meeting closing? Against? Declare it carried. Declare the meeting closed. And I bid you all a good night. And I also thank the members of the public for joining us tonight, our first live streamed council meeting, the first of many. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes, good night all. Glad to.
Night all.
Bye.